Greetings, family. Um, this is Cassandra-Floyd, also known as the Daughter-of-the-Fates, founder of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. I'm actually only going to be on here for about an hour, maybe a little less than an hour, because as I was creating the notification for this live, I got a job. So I have to leave here in enough time to drive to this client's house. So my ambition was to finish reading this book tonight, but I'm going to be with this client for a long time. So I don't know if I'm going to come back and be reading at 10 o'clock at night. We'll see how I feel. But in the meantime, I'm going to read for about an hour. Yes. Also, I'm showing off because I just made these beautiful earrings. I was looking at this old video of Nina Simone performing live, and she had on these earrings that were kind of like this. I was like, I can make that. I said, right here, made my little Nina Simone earrings that I'm too hype about. So I said, let me wear them for the live. So anyway, that happened today. Okay, so it's been a few days. I said I was going to try to finish the book by New Year's Day. That didn't happen. There was a lot happening that was unexpected, and so I didn't get back, but I'm going to read for an hour. Greetings, Java Watson. I'm going to read for an hour, and then I have to leave to go to work, but I am going to finish this book before the weekend's over if I don't get to it tonight. Okay, so for those of you who have been reading along, we are on page 173, the last paragraph at the bottom of page 173. Okay. Let's see. Greeting Trail to Freedom. Okay, Goddess Y, everybody coming in the room. Cool. The required osmosis within the male as well as within the female psyche that then has to be externalized in a new society is a vast harmonic reordering process from an unleashed flow of energy, a cosmosis. The source of the energy is women's participation in power of being as we hear and speak forth our own new word. It is not yet time for dialogue with those who have stolen the power of speech, made all language a system of false words. Having made the part stand for the whole. Having made the part stand for the whole. Now I'm going to do it. I'm really going to be disciplined tonight. Rather, it is a time for men to learn at last to listen and to hear, knowing that this is how to find their own promise and to discover at last the way to adequate speech. Perhaps very few men will want to listen, but those who do not will have chosen their own non-being. As a well-known prophet once said, quote, "He who has ears to hear, let him hear," end quote. Earth, air, fire, water, ecology, and the cosmic covenant. George Wall has pointed out that we have something to learn from the history of the dinosaurs, who had very small brains for their size. Since the proportion of brains to brawn was very low, they disappeared. Whereas within the individual human being, the proportion of brains to brawn is high. Technology has inversed the proportion, and we are coming again into the situation of the dinosaurs. Cars, not the people in them, for we realize that the people are not altogether in control, kill more than 50,000 Americans a year. On a more disastrous level, Wall points out that the discovery of a nuclear reaction, the process of turning hydrogen into helium, which could mean that we could shortly make our own sunlight, is turned mainly into a weapon that threatens our lives and the life of the planet. Again, The trips to the moon have been negligible for high-level scientific content, but are expected to be useful for future weaponry. Our self-destructive use of brawn need not have been. Quote, it is our Western culture at work, our Western culture with its beautiful Judeo-Christian ethic. It is our culture alone among the cultures of the earth that sees it that way, that has brought the technology of killing and destruction much further than any culture on earth ever dreamed of doing before. There are some points to be added to George Wald's insightful statement. This beautiful Judeo-Christian ethic of missions, missions to convert pagans over their dead bodies, missions to the moon, missions to drop hydrogen bombs, and ultimately end life on the planet. It is the culmination of masculine-feminine schizophrenia, which is causing the race to rape itself to death. The brain, which the brawn is overshadowing, is essentially not technical reason, but ontological reason, that realm where power, justice, and love meet in harmony. The cosmic covenant is the discovery of this harmony. Far-sighted thinkers have pointed out that the moral imperative of respect for life, formerly understood in quantitative terms, must now be understood in terms of the quality of life. This has obvious implications, such as the need for population control and for bringing a halt to the waste of resources and pollution of the environment. Such needs are not understood by the machismo mind. Marcuse uses the category of obscenity to describe the behavior of the affluent monster. He points out that this society is obscene in producing and indecently exposing a stifling abundance of wares while depriving its victims abroad of the necessities of life. In its prayers, in its ignorance, and in the wisdom of its kept intellectuals. Meanwhile, of course, the affluent society pretends to be improving the quality of life, disguising what is actually happening by its usual techniques, which I have called the reversal. Marcuse observes, for those of you who are following along, I'm reading Beyond God the Father and Toward a Philosophy of Women's Liberation by Mary Daly. Marcuse observes the establishment abuses the term, Marcuse observes that the establishment abuses the term obscenity by applying it not to expressions of its own immorality, but to the behavior of another. Quote, obscene is not the picture of a naked woman who exposes her pubic hair, but that of a fully clad general who exposes his medals rewarded in a war of aggression. Obscene is not the ritual of hippies, but the declaration of a high dignitary of the church that war is necessary for peace. End quote. Marcuse's perception is acute, and he rightly calls for linguistic therapy, which would free words from almost total distortion of their meanings by the establishment. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Yet, I must point out that the therapy will never be radical enough if the basic obscenity is perceived as capitalism rather than sexism. The very word obscene itself, as used by the establishment, suggests the locus of the essential perversion and victimization. Marcuse's own insightful juxtaposition of the naked woman and the fully clad general reveals the basic reversal in phallic morality, which is still observable in socialist as well as in capitalist societies. Such social criticism does not go far enough. It employs revealing instances of the powerful elite's sexist behavioral, imaginative, and linguistic distortions while still perceiving that these distortions' radical source in capitalism and their cure in socialism. Well, here goes the shot fired. Damn. Another sentence from the same essay of Marcuse is symptomatic of this phenomena of short-sightedness. He writes, quote, "Thus we are faced with the contradiction that the liberalization of sexuality provided an instinctual basis for the repressive and aggressive power of the affluent society." End quote. The hell? It should be stressed, and this is what feminism is doing, that the socialized liberalization of sexuality provides an instinctual basis for the repressive and aggressive power of the sexist society. Come on in the room. For of course, it is not a genuine liberation of sexuality that displaces the obscenity of generals and projects it upon naked women. And the essential disease is not affluence in itself. The lifting of taboos on genital sexuality does nothing to liberate from sex roles. Listen, man. Mark Hughes himself says that this relaxation binds the free individuals libidinally to the institutionalized fathers. Damn. Such expressions of insight into the sexist nature of the oppressive society, strangely coupled with failure to direct the critique directly and assertedly at sexual oppression, is characteristic not only of intellectuals such as Marcuse, but also of more popular expressions of social criticism. Such films as The Godfather, The Ruling Class, and Deliverance can be seen as brilliant exposés of the social disease, which is patriarchalism. One could almost believe that the writers and directors must be committed feminists. Yet the functioning of these productions, with their amazingly revelatory juxtapositions of sex and violence and their exploitation of phallic symbolism, has not been directed intentionally to the service of feminism. Perhaps one could call such understanding of sexual alienation sub-intentional. Recognition of the real... Recognition of the real enemy's identity is so close to the surface of consciousness of the writers and directors of such productions that some feminists tend to find the experience of reading such books and watching such films almost unbearable. They know not what they say, it would seem. Then it is clear that women will have to speak forth the identity of that which is destroying us all. Okay, I have to say something about this. I watched so much YouTube today. It started out, and all of it, I guess that's just what my For You was trending all day. But I woke up watching this interview. It was all interviews today, by the way, too. Woke up watching this interview. I can't remember the sister's name. I'll get it for you guys later. Apparently she's been making a lot of waves, and people have been, especially kind of like incel commentators have been commenting a lot. And not even necessarily incels, men who think they progressive, you feel me? And still, based on what this woman has said, they up in arms. So the sister, who is, for, lack of a better term, a Black Brit, her family is from Nigeria, but she was raised in England. And she made a statement very recently that, what did she say? Which was not, to me, it was not a statement that was like shocking or offensive. She made the statement that that marriage in the patriarchal age, marriage as we have come to understand it, is sex work. That essentially women, with the expectation that their life-preserving necessities will be met in this arrangement, are willing to barter with the only thing that they have if they don't earn, which is sex. And so they will barter in this relationship, but essentially they're working for room and board, and their bargaining chip, if you will, is their ability to put out, right? And so she makes this statement that marriage is sex work. And baby, when I say the internet is in an uproar, they in a whole uproar, okay? And so the interview was extremely good. I feel like she was extremely brilliant. She was extremely astute. The dude that was interviewing her, he was, I feel like probably as progressive as a man has the capacity to be in this society. And I say that because of something that she just said here. I watched another video, an interview of this guy who does more like political commentary, but he was interviewing this trans woman who she just did this video. It's a 3-hour video, but she wanted to really dive into various aspects of human sexuality, that she didn't want to be like methodical and extremely academic in her approach to addressing these topics that she wanted to address. And she also wanted to be able to try to keep it in a quote YouTube friendly PG kind of discussion, but still being able to dive deep into the matter of the varying issues around human sexuality, especially under patriarchy. So she used as her framing board for this discussion not Harry Potter, the Twilight series, right? The Twilight sagas, right? That interview, she too was very sharp. She was very, very, very sharp. And then one last interview that I saw was that same white guy that interviewed the trans woman, interviewed another woman who is a social researcher. She travels all over the world all the time, basically just interviewing people about their relationships, the dynamics of human relationships. Like that's her bag, right? That too was and so this particular discussion that they were having was about this quote, population crisis, the population decline, the population crisis or whatever. It was a really good interview. But there were some things, I'll probably have to do a whole breakdown of it because I found it really interesting. This woman that he was interviewing, that is the social scientist going around conducting all this research, it was really fascinating, y'all. And I know it wasn't my imagination. It was really fascinating how different his interviewing style was with this woman who's going around the world, trying to understand the population crisis and doing this through like interviewing people about the dynamics of their personal relationship, yada, yada, yada. And his interviewing style with the trans woman who was talking about like the different areas of sexual dynamic among human beings under patriarchy. And it was not a subtle difference in his interviews. In his interviewing style, I found it so fascinating because without trying to be offensive, the trans woman that he interviewed is a very, very convincing trans woman. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like if she did not announce that she was trans, I would not have known she was trans, right? Some things, people can look to, bone structure, non-surgical trans women, whatever. But if she had not announced in that podcast that she was trans, I wouldn't have known, right? But this guy follows her a lot. She is extremely brilliant in her whole like what do you call it? Like her research. And her podcast is funny. Like she is extremely funny. Even if she's covering like extremely serious content, she's very funny, very witty, right? And the woman that he interviewed that was the sociologist, she too was extremely funny, right? Like very, banterish and shit like that. Had a lot of little cute, metaphors for the complicated ideas she was trying to communicate. But baby, when I tell you, it is something to be studied. It is something to be studied. I know I'm kind of going off a little bit, but I wanted to mention this because I haven't talked at all. This is the first time I'm even speaking out of my mouth. I haven't even had a phone call today. And I'm sitting here watching back to back this guy interview two different women. And the way that he interviewed the biological woman, I kept getting frustrated, and I watched her interview first. But when I was watching it, the content was great. I kept taking like mental notes, like, yep, because y'all know this is my soapbox right now. All everybody that's talking about the crisis of the birth rate everywhere on earth is always billionaires and shit. It's like my soapbox. I'm gonna have to do a whole little thing on it. But I found it interesting. There were so many points that she was making that I found so interesting because of, again, I'm trying to revert back to right here what she just said in this last sentence. So, but anyway, so they're going over like what are the specialists around the world and the economists around the world and the scientists around the world contributing to attributing the birth rate crisis to la 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 la. The thing that I found frustrating about the interview, and it was just annoying because in my mind I'm like, well, he's just a man. That's what they do. Because he kept interrupting her. She would be in the midst, and she wasn't very long-winded like I have a tendency to be. She was very, concise about delivering her ideas, but he kept interjecting. He kept cutting her off. So even if she was having a free-flowing thought that you like holding on to, he would interject. I was like, damn, that's too bad. Because, and then sometimes she would lose her train of thought because of his interjection. That happened a lot. It was almost a 2-hour interview. I was like, damn, that's too bad, because she's really sharp and she's really, she's really putting some things out there. She's missing the boat in some ways, but she's also bringing up some things I hadn't considered, right? And then right after that, I saw him, the same guy, interview this trans woman about the dynamics, and this bitch is genius. like that interview was good. That interview was good. It was good. But the thing that was poignantly different was that not once in the 2-hour interview did he cut her off. Not one time. I said, oh, shit. Now, is this my imagination? Do I need to go back and rewatch these goddamn 2 videos back to back? I said, because I was in my body frustrated. Like, damn, why you keep cutting her off? Like, let her finish the sentence. You feel me? Brilliant. You understand? PhD, researcher, literally globetrotting, just asking people questions. Brilliant woman. And he kept he kept cutting her off to add his 2 cents. He who does not have a PhD or a master's degree. He admitted it on the show. He said, yeah, I only got a bachelor's degree too. You know what I'm saying? And so at first, when I just saw him interview her, I was like, oh, well, that's just how men do, child. Don't matter. It's his show, so he feel like, he can just interject. You feel me? And then I watched him interview that trans woman. And in 2 hours, he did not once cut her off. Not once. Not one time. This is a sociology experiment that needs to happen. Because that's the reason I made it a point to mention that if she had not said she was trans, I would not know. She is very beautiful, like aesthetically good looking, you know what I'm saying? Stereotypically looking white woman, nice hair, her hair is done, light makeup. Yeah, right. She's good looking as good looking goes. You feel me? Very like soft face, if you will, whatever. So what is it and they're not in the same room. So it's not like the pheromone exchange is what is contributing to him being so super attentive and respectful that not one time does he cut her off in the entire 2-hour goddamn interview. But the other woman, when I tell you, I made a mental note of it because I was cleaning. I wasn't just sitting here watching YouTube. I was like multitasking, organizing my jewelry space or whatever. I said, damn, this is really interesting. This is really interesting. And then that first interview with the sister, it was a brother who was interviewing the sister who is a sex worker. She isn't, let me make a correction. She is an asexual sex worker. She is a dominatrix who does not have intercourse. She does not have sex. with her subs. Her interview was radical. It was so good. And it was interesting because of how it was so beautifully eloquent how she was communicating these ideas and like bringing the shit all back together, right? And it was interesting because the brother that interviewed her, like I said, as progressive as a guy can be, I think that he was that, and he still kept missing the boat. Not like in little ways, like in big ways. Like he asked her, do you ever want to get married? Because she identifies as a very rigid, like feminist. She said, even though feminists don't think I'm a feminist, I'm still a feminist. But my feminism is different. She said, because yes, I want to be married. Yes, I want to have children. But I will not marry a man who does not enter into the relationship on the terms that I set. The terms that I set is that my life needs to be secured by his finances. This is how we're going to build wealth together. But coming into it, I am the prize, whatever, she going off. And he was like, but what about love? And she was like, what about love? And he said, well, don't you like what role or what, how does love factor into it? She said, first of all, we have to recognize that this whole kind of like way that we are hogtied to the concept of romantic love being a necessary ingredient for marriage is purely Western. She said there are more people on the planet than just in Europe and in North America. And the majority of those people that enter into, quote, marriages, love is not a factor at all. It's transactional. And typically it's transactional at the expense of women. She said, so that's one thing. She said, and if that's the case, and I happen to live in a society, I happen to live in the West, and I still recognize that it by and large, women make less money than men, and they needing the same thing women need, affection and emotion and so on and so forth. She is like, I'm not going to give those things away. I'm not going to give those things away. What is going to happen is I am going to set the terms, and whoever meets and is willing to accept those terms is probably who I'll end up marrying. He was like, well, what about if you met somebody that you were really attracted to and he was really good to you? And he said, and he was nice, because that's all we require is a motherfucker to be nice. You feel me? And he was nice, but maybe he didn't make as much money as you. Then she said, we might be able to be friends, but that's it. She said, we might, and that's a hard might. She said, but I would never consider marrying him. So he goes and starts to tell a story based on this question that he just asked her about how he and his wife, they were dating at the time, was 20. They were both 25 years old, but she was already established. She already had her master's degree by the time she was 25. She was already working at a successful law firm by the time she was 25. And he was like, I have no money. But we were dating, you know what I'm saying? I would take her out. We had a great time, whatever. And we dated for a while, and then we ended up getting married. He said, and we got married at the age of 25. We got married at the age of 25. And about a year later, he was like, look, I want to talk to you. I've been really thinking about like an idea that I have for a business that I want to start up. And I want to know if you can help me start this business. And so the girl liquidated her pension that she'd already been paying into. She liquidated her entire pension, got cash for it, and gave him the entire pension as the startup capital to start his business. And so he's interviewing the girl, and she was like, whoa. She was like, your wife is a dime, child. Because that wouldn't have been me. She straight up said, it wouldn't have been me. She said, and while that worked for you because you are a man, she said, I've been watching you since I was younger. You are a man who seems to be above board, ambitious, has integrity, whatever. You are not the norm. There are too many stories of too many women who have taken extremely detrimental financial hits to, quote, support the dream of their partner. And then when they partner come up, they are left not only not being recompensated for the for the startup capital that they turned over, but left completely when they no longer stimulate the man in a certain way. She said, so no, that wouldn't be me. Good for your wife and good for y'all that y'all still together and still work or whatever. She said, but it wouldn't be me. And I would not counsel any other woman to do that shit. That we have to start raising the bar and making men evolve with the rest of us, right? She said, that's why I spent 6 years in therapy. And so that I could evolve. And I'm not going to be in a relationship with a man who is not willing for himself, not for me, not for another woman, for himself to evolve. I said, well, come on in the room, girl. The 3 interviews today that happened, all about human sexuality, the dynamics of human sexuality, power dynamics, and all of that shit. And then I read this sentence right here. And she says, and all 3 of the interviews, all of them, which were about 2 hours long, were men interviewing women. All 3 of them. And they just came through my For You. It wasn't like I was searching for the shit. They just came through my For You as I was up in here cleaning up. And I kept saying the same thing over and over and over again after I heard certain catchphrases and red flags coming from both these men who were interviewing these women, right? And so she says here, let's see. Recognition of the real enemy's identity is so close to the surface of consciousness of the writers and directors of such productions that some feminists tend to find the experience of reading such books and watching such films almost unbearable. They know not what they say, it would seem. Then it is clear that women will have to speak forth the identity of that which is destroying us all. The sub-intentional revelations of male critics indicate that some receptivity of this knowledge may be possible, that the capacity to hear is closer to consciousness than we would have expected. The time for us to speak is precisely now. And the reason, the connection between those 3 interviews and what she just said here is the fact that she said they know not what they say. They absolutely do. There was one more thing that I watched today. It was called Eat the Rich, right? It was a short think piece by this guy on how we're being duped by Hollywood. So he was taking 4 different movies. He said, has anybody else noticed how Hollywood is making a lot of movies that seem to be really progressive because of how outspoken they are in their criticism of the ultra wealthy, of billionaires, and of the millionaire and billionaire class. He said, is that a paradox? Here you got an institution, Hollywood, run by billionaires and millionaires, consistently spinning out movies that seem to be like, promoting this narrative that is antagonistic to the wealthy. So what is their angle? Like, what is it? Because obviously what they're producing has to benefit them. And what we have to do is read through what seems like a really progressive and exciting movie to find out how the billionaire class that is producing this stuff is benefiting from movies that seem to be outright audacious criticisms of the ultra wealthy and the billionaire class. And I was like, because, and he was saying some of the same things, but it's because they know. And so this is a sleight of hands. Let's make this seemingly progressive movie about, quote, eat the rich and down with the wealthy class and up with the peasantry, and he did like 4 different movies. Everybody, the first one he talked about was that damn Barbie movie y'all all went out to watch and did commentary for fucking months about how progressive it was and how it was a new feminist anthem or some shit. And so he broke that down. But I'm saying all of that because she says here, they know not what they say, but they damn well do. There is this it's like this phenomenon that's just below the surface. Like you can, like it's ever present, it's palpable, right? And while you can't identify it right away, everybody can feel it. Like it's like this thing where, I don't know, I can't even come up with a good analogy, but it's right below the surface, right? And those that are in positions of power feel it just like we do. But their position of power is what makes them experience it differently than we do. And so they own and control the mechanisms of narrative creation. They own and control the institutions of narrative creation. So recognizing this dis-ease, this kind of weird dis-ease, this thing that everybody's experiencing just below the surface, you're like, we got to get in front of this. We got to find a way to pacify these motherfuckers. And so what the commentator was saying was like, they give you what you want. They know that you're annoyed. They know that you're frustrated. They know that you're unhappy with your life. They know that you're struggling. And so they give you the content that pacifies you. You feel vindicated because you feel seen when you see a movie about how somebody overcomes the billionaire class, or some billionaire has to pay the price for his crimes, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? He said it's their insidious way of getting in front of what they are already sensing is a growing discontent in the general population. And what it does, just like with your damn iPhone in your hand, scrolling through your shit all the time, it gives you a dopamine hit that vindicates the seething, low-level rage that's constantly stewing, but you don't have an outlet for that. And that's what he was like, because they're just back to back, these hero movies, this down with the system, this, up with the oppressed, all of these movies. But these are being produced by the billionaire class. These are being produced by the millionaire class, and not for your benefit. So what is the purpose? What is the angle? And here she is talking about how the movies and the books that we write, it would seem, right? What did she say here? She said, it would seem like these are brilliant exposés of the social disease of patriarchalism. That's what she said in 1973. She said all these movies coming out, right, of these popular social criticisms, you feel me, would seem to the unknowing person, you feel me, to be brilliant exposés of social disease, of the social disease in which is patriarchalism. She just said that in 1973. I just sat here and watched this dude talk about the same thing today in 2025. Anyway, I didn't mean to go off on that so much, but I'm gonna have to put the links to these interviews that I saw, because I've been up in here subdued. I'm like, what am I gonna talk to y'all about, or am I just gonna read? Now I gotta go to work. I don't know who this is banging the hell out of me, but it's probably okay. Yeah, okay. So let me go ahead and finish reading, because like I said, I can only read till 7 o'clock, and then I have to get up out of here. And I will say one more thing. The other thing that I wanted to say directly in response to this, and why I brought up those 3 interviews and that Hollywood thing, is because she said right here, she said, the time for us to speak is precisely now. I talk a lot about this with Mary Daly, because so there were several things that I experienced in these interviews. First, it was the inherent weaknesses of these male interviews to reach certain conclusions because of their position and proximity to power. That's the only reason that makes it difficult for a particular person or a particular group or class of people to meet conclusions that everybody else is like, that was easy to see. It was easy to come to this conclusion, like how you missed the boat. You feel me? And I'm telling you, worldview and material interest will always make it difficult for you to see what is clear to everybody else based on your proximity to power and privilege. Every time, all the time. Your material interest and your privilege will always make it harder for you to see, because you can only go so far in your quote struggle against oppression, in your quote struggle against racism or whatever. You can only go so far. The far that you can go to is to the point that the benefit for you ends. Is the benefit for you ends. That's it. So when I'm talking about how the only people on earth who don't have anything to lose by a complete and total dismantling of patriarchal institutions are women of color in general and Black-skinned women around the world in particular. That's it. There ain't nowhere to go after that. That's it. And so the weaknesses in being able to understand something that we see clearly is based on their proximity to privilege and power, right? And so whether it's the black male interviewer saying some crazy shit that just, it was like, are you even listening to what this woman is saying? Then the white guy and the dynamic and how he interviewed the trans woman and how he entered the cis woman, right? Even in his style of interviewing was really interesting to witness. But even in some of the conclusions that he came to, which was short-sighted and weak because of the fact that he is a cis-het white male, but not only him, the two white women, the trans woman and the white woman that he interviewed too. There were so many points in the interview where I was like, that's sharp. Okay, keep going. But that was as far as they could get. They couldn't go any deeper past this statement that they made or this, this idea that seemed really sharp and on point, but they couldn't go any deeper. And I'm saying, like, that's it? You just gonna stop right there? Why? Again, because of their proximity to privilege and power, that makes it difficult for them to see anything that they cannot understand is directly connected to their particular material interest and positions of power and access to privilege. That's a hard pill to swallow, but that's how we're gonna have to start seeing this shit. Them 3 interviews were mind-blowing today. I could have sat here and took notes, but I was like, let me get my place cleaned up, you feel me? But that's why I mentioned it, because even with Mary Daly, I've had to have this conversation with y'all as we've been walking through this book, that this woman is brilliant, is a goddamn genius. And as genius as she is, a PhD, I think she had 2 PhDs, as genius as she was, how interesting it is how she can miss the boat, conveniently miss the boat in particular areas. And those particular areas are almost always around the question of the racial dynamics of feminism itself. So that's some shit we really gonna have to dig into, because I am, after this last reading that I did for you guys, I was like, I really have to spend some time on this idea for a live I want to do about how feminism has failed us, not from this dumbass perspective of these weird incels and right-wingers, from the perspective of Black, brown, red, and yellow women, how Eurocentric, white female-led 3 waves of feminism have fucking failed us, The movement was a failure. And we're seeing evidence of it all over the place right now, even in these discussions about how is it that Gen Z could be like thrust backwards into all these fucking antiquated ideas like trad wife shit. It's predominantly Gen Zs on that bullshit. You feel me? All of these weird incels are predominantly Gen Zs. And so this is the evidence of the inherent weaknesses of a white-centered, white female-led 3 waves of feminism, because they will always stop where their material interest and their particular access to power ends. That's it. They can't go any further. They can't go any deeper. And that is the inherent weakness, I believe, imposed on them by a dominating society that is still globally, dictated by the whims of white males. Not exclusively, but still dictated by the whims of white males. Anyway, let me shut up. So even when she says it's time for us to speak, the time for us to speak is precisely now. What I'm saying is that white women cannot lead a successful evolutionary leap forward into human history because of where their material interests lie. They can't. Even if they don't mean they ain't, quote, good people. They don't mean that they can't be radical, on point feminist. It just means even in simple discussion, they will always miss the boat, man. They will always. Some of the discussions I've had just over the last week with white women, I'm like, damn, and these women are sharp as shit. These women are like gangsters. You feel me? And there's still always this invisible block that comes up in front of them that always stop their understanding from going any deeper because their whiteness will not allow it. And that shit is so deeply ingrained in them. I'm talking about their whiteness as a concept, a construct in their head, not their white ass skin. You feel me? Same thing with men. Black men will never be able to lead a successful revolutionary, evolutionary movement that benefits everybody at nobody's expense, because they still have a proximity to power that always keeps them short-sighted in the depth of the solution. Always. Listening to this man interview this sister today was really interesting. It was really fascinating. And like I said, as progressive as a man can be, I feel like he was it. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. So even here, what she said, what did she say here? She said something to the effect of, let's see. The juxtaposition of sex and violence and their exploitation of phallic symbolism, perhaps the religion, subconscious, yada yada yada. Okay, where was it? Because she said that shit. Hold on. Where'd she say that at? Was it this far back? Shit. Oh, here it is. Here it is. She said, the source of the energy is women's participation in the power of being as we hear and speak forth our own new word. It is not yet time. Listen. She said, it is not yet time. Hold on. It is not yet time for dialogue with those who have stolen the power of speech and made all language a system of false words. Having made that part made the part stand for the whole. She said, this ain't the time for men to be talking. She said, y'all can't talk right now. That's what she said. She said, not only do we have to speak, but we have to speak forth our own understanding, our own vision of what the world has the potential to be. That's why everybody keep missing the boat on the solutions for all the great wrongs in the world, all the great ills in the world, is because they're still trying to come up with these solutions based on their proximity to the systems that are in place. This idea that this is the most progressive that it can be, these social systems, these global nations and shit. This is the most progressive time in human history. And we can use the systems. See, we can use democracy. We just have to fix it. That's why everybody keep missing the boat on the simplicity of the solutions for the things that are wrong with the planet. Is because even we as women are still using male language to identify and attempt to solve the goddamn problem. She said we can't do that. She said the source of the energy is women's participation in the power of being as we hear and speak forth our own new word. It is not yet time for dialogue with those who have stolen the power of speech and made all language a system of false words and have made the part men stand for the whole of humanity. Rather, it is time for men to learn at last to listen and to hear, knowing that this is how to find their own promise and to discover at last the way to adequate speech. Perhaps very few men will want to listen, but those who do not will have chosen their own non-being. As well-known prophet said, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. That's what she said at the beginning of this reading. So I'll keep going back to, I'm sitting here listening to all these brilliant women being interviewed by men, and these men conducting decent interviews, but steadily missing the boat. Even the women, even the white women saying deep shit, trying to connect the dots and shit. And these men, because of their proximity to power, could not go deep enough. But even these two white women, this trans woman and this cishet woman, they too had a stopping point in the depth of their understanding based on their proximity to privilege, baby. That shit is deep watching in real time. Anyway, so people have to learn to listen. People have to learn to listen. People have to learn to listen. And I'm telling you, it sounds simple. It is the most complicated thing in this world to make happen. Isn't that something? The most complicated thing to make happen. And I'm witnessing it as these three men are interviewing these three dynamic women. It happened to me the other night at this thing that I went to. And even my homegirl said, she said, I'm going to have to be your manager. I was like, what you mean? She said, because I was listening to you talk to this white woman. And she said, there was a point, and I don't know you well enough, so I didn't do it. She said, but there was a point. She called me the next morning because she said it was on her spirit all night. She said, there was a point where I just wanted to take you by the arm and say, can I talk to you in the bathroom really quick? And tell you, stop talking. You're not getting paid. She doesn't deserve what you're saying. That's what she told me. That's what she told me. She said, sometimes I just want to like tap you on the shoulder and be like, save some of that. Save some of that. But what she said was, you are too brilliant to be giving away what you give away to people who do not deserve it. I said, oh shit. Well, God damn it. I said, next time, yank my chain. I get real enthusiastic about sharing. I'm on this mission to like change the world. And the only way to change the world is to change people's hearts. You feel me? The only way to change people's heart is to communicate with them. So I'll be in my bag. You feel me? I said, but I'm glad you called because I was exhausted after that conversation with that woman the other night, and I couldn't figure out why. And she called me first thing in the morning. She said, because your ass was being leached off of by an energetic vampire. And I wanted to yank your chain, but I didn't want to seem rude because we don't know each other like that. We just starting to kick it. But I said, this girl is too brilliant to be having this conversation with this woman right here. And she didn't know the woman 20 years. So it ain't like this somebody just random. She know this woman. She's known this woman 20 years. I said, damn, don't, next time tap me on the shoulder, pull me to the bathroom and be like, don't say nothing else. Let's change the subject or whatever. You know what I mean? But even then, in a space with women, and we have to have this conversation too. There is a resistance, and that resistance comes from somewhere. Resistance comes, we resist when we're uncomfortable. When something is unfamiliar, when something is uncomfortable, this is the point that we buck against it, that we resist. Whatever it is, if it's a new job and we have to learn a new skill, it's more painful because there's this innate thing in us like resisting, like, damn, I don't want to do this. I got to learn something new just to get a paycheck, whatever. Listen, Constance woo. I feel that shit every day, right? But anyway, there's this resistance and we can't articulate it, but there's this like buck back, even if it's subtle, because the woman didn't say anything off-putting or cross, but her energy, I was like, I felt it 3 or 4 different times. I was like, oh, well, there it is. There that white girl shit. There that white girl shit. There it is. Just always waiting for the goddamn shoe to fall in a conversation with people who swear they're progressive, who swear they're ahead of the curve. And so you take them for their word, engage in a conversation with them, and then that shit rears its ugly head, y'all. And then the resistance comes where now there's something that shifts in the conversation and they have to try to prove they know more than you. You feel me? And so my homegirl is sitting there watching this conversation happen. It wasn't just the two, me and this white girl. It was all 4 of us talking. But she kept noticing how the white girl kept directing everything she was saying towards me. And she called me the next day. She was like, don't do that shit again. I was like, next time, yank my chain. I don't know you people. You feel me? I was the newbie on the block. I ain't know nobody in the house. I didn't know the dynamics. So I'm sitting here this morning thinking like, you know, maybe it's something that I did, or maybe I get real enthusiastic. I get real hype. And sometimes because my face be frowned up when I'm talking, like, yeah, it's just me being enthusiastic. I'm not mean. I never have been. You feel me? But I'm like, yeah, you know, whatever. And so I know sometimes because people aren't used to communicating like we do, we get hype. Black people get hype when we talk with each other. Don't mean we beefing. It just means we like, yeah, girl, you know what I'm saying? Or my eyebrows crinkle a little bit or whatever. So I'm thinking like, I'm on my walk the next morning thinking like, damn, why I feel so wiped out from this conversation last night? Like, why did I let this human being drag me into some shit? The conversation started off fine, but now I felt fucked up when I woke up the next morning. And this sister must have peeped it because she called me. She was like, don't do that again. She said, I don't want to say nothing because, you know, y'all was getting to know each other and I didn't want to seem rude. But she was like, girl, at 11 o'clock, I wanted to yank your chain and be like, that's enough. That's enough on that. That's enough on that. You know what I'm saying? And so the resistance that I was talking about is that it is I've been saying it to you for 5 years. It is the inherent opposition that everyone on the face of the planet has to the power presentation embodied in Black female bodies. That's the starting point. That if me opening my mouth as Black and female becomes this thing that makes you uncomfortable in your skin, bitch, you need to lean into that. Because that's your spirit. That's your spirit. Your conditioning is where the resistance is coming from. But your spirit is like, bitch, this is what we need. This is what we need. But your conditioned mind, your battered mind, your brainwashed mind, and we all brainwashed, me too. But I am constantly at war with the demon in my brain every day, constantly at war with the demon in my brain. You feel me? And if something that a Black woman says out of her very mouth sets your spirit ablaze, bitch, you need to be paying attention to that. You need to lean into that. You need to lean into that. Because y'all don't listen to everybody else. Y'all don't listen to everybody else on earth. Y'all don't listen to everybody political commentary. Everybody. Here, I'm sitting here watching this white guy interview a trans woman and a biological woman, and can see, even as his consciousness of understanding that this is a trans woman, and the dynamic difference in even how he interviewed these two women. I said, that is a hell of a fucking statement. That this trans woman's proximity to maleness yielded his goddamn respect in 2 hours. He didn't force a single interjection. He waited until she put a period after every statement before he then responded. It was not subtle. It was fucking evident. It was striking. So if I can experience that myself, frustrated in how the difference between, and he probably wasn't even aware of it. Of course, he wasn't conscious of it, but that's still his conditioning. His value level was placed in that person that in his mind had closer proximity to whiteness and maleness. And his behavior showed it. Of course, he wasn't thinking that way. That wasn't something that was happening consciously. This is how conditioning comes out. So if I can experience this in two marginalized communities, this biological woman and this trans woman, and the difference in how the white boy interviewing them was strikingly different based on his idea of value of one being elevated based on the trans woman's proximity to his maleness. Then imagine the experience that Black women are having on a regular basis, especially in intellectual circles and spaces, especially in spaces where we are attempting to communicate ideas to the group that we know can be impactful, that we know based on our absence of proximity to power, to privilege, and all of those things. We have a greater, grander insight and view about what can change this fucking planet and what can change it radically. And you see the evidence of it all over the planet. Every time you turn around, some Black skin, some dark skin, some native, some brown person, some Indian woman with nothing, creating genius out of nothing. Creating genius literally out of nothing. You see it all the time. It is our innate need to see something better unfold on the planet, whether we have children or not. That's not even like the edifice for it. We just feel this need. And so we constantly trying to solve the problems, You understand? And so I guess I'm gonna have to stop reading because I gotta go to work. But it's just fascinating to watch those things today. And then, of course, which happens all the time when we read Mary Daly, whatever came through today on this damn television happened to directly correspond with what we reading tonight from 1973. Now, I love how that continues to happen. I have these two clients to go take care of, so I'll probably be done at around 10 o'clock if I'm in a mood, if I'm in a vibe, I might come back up in here and read. But I hope y'all are studying. And what I mean by studying is I hope you are, first of all, taking care of yourself. And I'm talking about taking care of your head, taking care of your mind. You understand? One of the things, and I'm gonna have to do it myself because I've been over the last week since the new year started. I can feel like something different, and so I was thinking today about a reading I got years ago because I told you I don't get readings from males anymore. So this was 2016, I think. I got this reading, and one of the things that he said is because of the Orisha that are most related to me, which is Oya, who quote sits on my head, and Shango, who sits at my heart. They're both very volatile energy, right? The fire and the winds, the very volatile energy. And so I would need to be regularly wearing things on my head to keep my head cool, to keep my head cool. I just thought about that today. And so I'm probably going to start doing like, because what he suggested is I start wearing head wraps that are either cool colors like blues and purples or straight up white head wraps, just to keep my head cool, to keep the fire and the winds from like creating chaos in my thinking. The reason I'm mentioning that, and I'm suggesting that for you too, if you are feeling what I've been feeling this week, it's been too easy. I've had to like actually stage a contest with myself several times this week to not get caught up in the headlines that have been happening since the first day of the year. They do that shit deliberately. You all being optimistic about the new year and doing your little, you feel me, vision boards and this and this and this. And the first day of the new year, they just want to start firing at your brain with bullshit. You understand? And so I'm not even going to talk about, but y'all know what the headlines have been for the last 3 days. You know what the headlines have been all over the globe. And that shit is deliberate orchestration. I swear to you, I promise you, it's not random acts of violence. It is deliberate. It is deliberate to attempt again to galvanize control of your thinking, to galvanize control of your emotions, to what did I call it? To emotional mining is what they're doing. Emotional mining is what they're doing. We're just 3 days out from the inauguration. So it's just a lot going on that is vying for your attention. So I have had to be very deliberate. I know what's happening in the world, but I have not watched a single video about it. I have not watched a single commentary about it. I have not. And it would be easy for me to do that. You feel me? Even today, the only reason I was able to watch these 3 interviews is because I made up my mind I was going to organize a specific area of my space, and I knew it was going to take some time, my jewelry workspace. But even then, just being deliberate about what I was consuming, man, because it's too easy. It's too easy this first week. And this first week, astrologically is extremely significant, and that's why they came out the gate swinging with everything negative. It was a way again to emotionally and energetically mine you. You understand? So keep your mind clear of that shit. Keep your I mean, I hate to sound like it's evading, but it is not. Wrap your head up if you need to. Cool colors or white. Do it for the next week. You understand? And be deliberate about what you allow into your consciousness. If you got to play music, if you got to, whatever it is, if you have to go for a walk. I went and walked 5 miles the other day. Oh my God, I meant to go to the car and show y'all what I found on my walk. Oh my God, I'm gonna have to come back tonight. Y'all are not going to believe what the fuck I found on my walk on the second day of the new year. Y'all ain't gonna believe it. And I'm not gonna tell you now. I'm gonna leave you in limbo and wondering, because even if I just come back late tonight to just show you what the fuck I found on my walk. I got every hair on my body is standing. I meant to go downstairs and get it out of the car before I did the live, but whatever. I got something to show y'all. Y'all ain't gonna believe it. Y'all ain't gonna believe it. Y'all ain't gonna believe it. But now I got to get up out of here. So I do want to say that. Get yourself some head wraps. You understand? Drink plenty of water and be really, really deliberate, especially for the rest of this week and through next week. be really, really deliberate about what you are allowing into your head, whether it's through your ears, whether it's through your eyes. Be deliberate about what you're letting into your head. Okay. All right. So that's all I got. That's all I got for right now. We'll do another live tonight. It'll probably be short, but yeah, I miss you guys. And soon this little thing that I'm on will stabilize. So until then, I will see you guys later on this evening. Peace.